Welcome to Leaders and Learners. My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of public relations and leadership. Join us as we talk to organizational leaders, elected officials, experts, authors, artists, and personalities, sharing their stories, talking about how they got to where they are and how they continue to learn and lead the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Greetings, good people. It's your girl T here again for another exciting episode of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. Today, I have someone that I'm sure is going to shed some light on a few things for y'all, but I have a feeling I'm going to get to learn a little bit of something too, and maybe even shed some light on a few things for him. I don't know. We'll see. But what I do know is that watching his journey since The Apprentice, that's where many of us were introduced to him. It's been enlightening to see how multifaceted someone can be. I think that's the first time I learned the word multi-achiever, right? It's like one of the new cliche words, but I realized that about him long ago, and just continuing to watch his journey through his career, post Apprentice, post the first book, post the second book, and everything else that has come with it. Then finding out he was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. That's always great for me because, I champion the MPHC and all the work that these organizations do, not just collegiately, but in graduate chapters. So without further ado, because I know we got questions, I want to bring on Dr. Randal Pinkett. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Sister Tonya. It is a pleasure to be here on the podcast. And I can guarantee you, I'm going to learn something too, because you're a bad sister. So I'm here as much as a leader, as a learner. You'd appreciate that, right?
Absolutely. I absolutely appreciate it. I want you to start off by telling the people a little bit about what they don't know about you, where you're from, kind of talk about your family a little bit. I know your collegiate years, you were an athlete, you were a high school athlete too, but I want people to hear about your upbringing a little bit. Talk about your parents, where you're from, and how you even got on this path.
So I am the proud son of Leslie Pinkett and Elizabeth Pinkett. My mother was born and raised in Philadelphia. My father was born in the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And I might add, I have yet to meet a Pinkett, any Pinkett, that does not have roots in the Eastern Shore of Maryland, including Rufus Pinkett, who was a conductor on the Underground Railroad alongside Harriet Tubman. My father went to undergrad at Morgan State, shout to HBCU. My mom went to Temple in Philly. But then my dad went to the Wharton School of Business in the 1960s to get his MBA. Now you got to process that. That's a bad brother right there. Yep. And that's where they met, in Philadelphia. My dad got a job after graduating Wharton in the 1960s at Goldman Sachs. You got to process that.
Did you say Wharton?
He went to Wharton for his MBA and then got a job at Goldman Sachs, 1960s. They got married. My brother was born 1969. I was born 1971. And they decided to move equidistant between New York and Philadelphia. So I grew up in the center of New Jersey, an hour north of Philadelphia, an hour south of New York City. And I grew up in a predominantly white community. And they moved me out of predominantly black Philly to predominantly white East Windsor. So I grew up as a black face in a white place and struggled early in my upbringing to define myself because I saw so few reflections of myself. But eventually got to Rutgers University, which is 35,000 students, 8% are black. So we're talking 6,000 students at Rutgers that are black. And while I didn't go to an HBCU, I went to an HBCS, a historically black cafeteria section. And that's where I found my people. Fast forward, I met 3 black men, Lawrence Hibbert, Jeffrey Robinson, Dallas Grundy, at that cafeteria section. We started a business at the ages of 21 and 20. We are now 52 and 51, 31 years later, we are still together. We're still in business and we still get along 31 years later. How about that?
I love this. Okay, so let's start here. How do you feel about when African Americans move their kids out of Black areas into areas that we are in the minority? Like, talk about that for me for a little bit. We live in Redondo Beach, California. We are 3%, a whole 3%. I think it was only 1.5 when we got here. So I'm recruiting, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, come on, it's okay. Like us. No. But I want you to talk about that experience because we do still get the, why'd y'all move all the way out there? They have good schools. Sorry. I mean, but with your people, with our people, that doesn't always come off well. So for someone that has found success, even looking back at your early childhood when they did move, like talk to me about how you felt about that. Would you do it with your own kids?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's no formulaic answer. It's about trade-offs. There's pros and cons. Naturally, growing up in a predominantly Black community, you have that affirmation of who you are, reflections of who you are, a higher likelihood, although not a guarantee, that you will grow up with a sense of pride around what it means to be Black.
Yep.
That may come with it schools that may not be at the level that you'd like, might not be in a neighborhood that you consider to be safe. Now, that's not all Black neighborhoods. I'm not generalizing here. It varies. But on the other hand, a predominantly white neighborhood, you don't see people who look like you. You might not have a sense of who you are, and you might not grow up with a sense of pride of what it means to be a Black person. You might assimilate, you might sell out. We've seen that too. So if I think about the scales that we're trying to balance in those two extremes, I think the core here is, A, you want the best for your kids. And whatever you can do to give your kids access to the best of what's available, given your means, you should do it. But on the other hand, what you also got to do is make certain, no matter where you go, that they know who they are, they know where they come from. And sometimes you have to be more intentional about it. I credit my parents with forming an informal organization called Our Kids. And what Our Kids was, all the handful of Black families in East Windsor, New Jersey, Redondo Beach, right? Who said, we're going to make certain our kids are connected to Black culture, connected to other Black youth, are exposed to the beauty and the excellence of our community. And it was those seeds that were planted that allowed me, when I got to Rutgers, to not lose my mind, but rather to find my people, because they established that foundation. So arguably, we ended up with the best of both worlds.
So I'm born and raised in San Jose, California, but I went off to Grambling University, and that was the most enriching experience of my life. Mm-hmm. It was
real talk.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Just being surrounded by us when you're being taught that us all together isn't a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a negative thing. It can be a violent thing. It can be, all these other connotations that weren't good. And then jumping into that experience and being like, oh, they done lied. Mm-hmm. They've been lying. This is amazing. Mm-hmm. So just out of curiosity, since your dad was successful, I'm sure in your eyes as a young person, you saw him as successful. You didn't go to a HBCU though. What was that decision like?
So it's an interesting story. My father left corporate America to become a professor at Spelman.
Mm.
He helped establish the computer science department at Spelman. There's still professors there that knew my father from his days and his years there. It is likely that I would have ended up at Morehouse were it not for the fact that my senior year of high school, my father passed away and left my mother with my brother already in college and me getting ready to transition to college with the difficult position of figuring out how to pay for it. Because had I gone to Morehouse, it would have been either reduced, if not free tuition, because he was a professor at Spelman. And so, again, a long story short, my mother told me, you're going to Rutgers University, because they're offering you a full academic and athletic ride. And that's what we can afford. It was the best deal that was offered to me. So I never had a choice of where to go to college. I was given where to go to college. But luckily, by the grace of God, my academic performance opened the door for that to become my reality.
I love it. Talk to me about that experience, though. What was Rutgers like for you?
Rutgers was an HBCS. I mean, there's a good number of Black students at Rutgers. And so while it is a PWI, a predominantly white institution, there's a solid ethos of Black consciousness, Black solidarity, and Black support. I marvel now in retrospect at the experience that I had of being in this environment on campus, which was so supportive and so encouraging and so connected amongst Black people. Again, look at my story. I met 3 Black men on that campus at 21 and 20, started a business on that campus because we were told we need to own our own businesses, create our own jobs, have economic empowerment. And we're like, okay, let's do it. So we start this.
Do that because I don't hear them saying that on campuses these days. So is it just specific for Rutgers, or was that somebody in your family and people that you surrounded yourself with? Who said that? Because we don't hear that a lot out here.
It was a Rutgers thing. That's why I say I marvel at the experience, because it is so sadly unique. Because I don't hear about it when I talk to my counterparts from other schools. But there were no less than 8 or 9 students that I can reel off right now who we all started businesses in college. I was not alone. We were not alone. In fact, we were role modeling what we saw. For example, one of my childhood friends, Wayne Abbott, who's part of Our Kids, Wayne was 2 years ahead of me. So he was a senior when I was a sophomore. Wayne started the business, designing and selling Afrocentric t-shirts. So when Lawrence, Dallas, Jeffrey, and I saw Wayne doing it, we said, oh, if he can do it, why can't we do it? So it's no surprise my first book was Campus CEO, The Student Entrepreneur's Guide to Launching a Multi-Million-Dollar Business, because I was a campus CEO and I was surrounded by Black campus CEOs.
I love that. So while I have you on campus, talk to me about Alpha Phi Alpha. Why Alpha? Where did that come from for you?
Yep. Well, Rhonda, it's another simple story. Watch this. My dad was an Alpha. His brother, my uncle, was an Alpha. His sister, my Aunt Barbara's oldest son, Barry, my cousin, was an Alpha. So I'm not just surrounded by campus CEOs. I'm surrounded by Alphas. And one of my business partners, Jeffrey, is my line brother.
Wow.
So I've got Alphas in my family, Alphas in my business, Alphas in my life. I got Alpha Phi Alpha in my blood.
Okay, listen here. I want you to help me make it make sense where MPHC organizations, there was a time when they were kind of the epitome of Black culture. They were what people aspired to be. They had, there was a lot of influence on campus. There was a lot of influence in Black culture. I feel like that has waned a bit. And as a member of Zeta, I've watched this happen over the last, 10, 15 years-ish. Like, what is that about? Where did the prestige of being a member of a Black Greek organization started to wane? And how do we get that back? Like, how do we claim that influence back over our young people for the most part? Many of us saw it when we were young and aspired to it. So what happened there? Like, in your opinion, in your thoughts, and then how do we really kind of elevate ourselves back to that position where we are of influence like we once were?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question, and I'd say that there are still remaining pockets of National Pan-Hellenic Council excellence, and then there are pockets in which, to your point, it's lost some of its luster. Some of the gravitas has been compromised, and I just think about the juxtaposition of organizations that are dedicated to excellence and service and scholarship and achievement, and a process for pledging and selection and the like that doesn't quite reflect those values. I mean, we've seen people die. We've seen people abused. We've seen people experience trauma for a process that's centered on excellence and achievement and scholarship and service. Like, I think that's where we got lost.
Okay.
And I think it can sometimes cause well-intentioned good people to say, no, thank you, and leaves something missing from who we were in originally and still desiring to be a part of our organizations. Now, let me be clear, Tanya. I didn't pledge undergrad for that very reason. It didn't attract me. I pledged grad because when I saw the grad chapter juxtaposed against the undergrad chapter, I said, oh, these guys are doing it. But some of what I saw from the undergraduate chapters just didn't speak to my being, didn't speak to my heart. So I think we've got to change that narrative. We got to recapture the underlying spirit and ethos of why these organizations were formed. And again, there are pockets where that does exist, but there's pockets where it's been lost.
I'm glad you said that. So take that a little further, especially with the body of work that you have been engaged in, knowing that our elders, those of us that are in the trenches doing the work, indeed, in diversity and inclusion work, in civil work, in government, all these things. How do we then have that effect on the undergrads? Because I am in full belief that it's really our responsibility to affect the young people, because they are our future. They are what's next. And if we are not influencing them in every way possible, then how can they become better than us? We grew up with our parents, grandparents wanting us to be better than them.
Right.
And even in these organizations, I see we have to be the influence to get them to where they will continue to take us forward. Because as wonderful as you are, there has to be another Dr. Pinkett on the way,
No,
How do we do that? Like, what is that? What is the message? What is the calling for us graduate members that are here doing the work, or supposed to be doing the work, and getting these young people to do the things that will take us to the next level as a people, as an organization, as a culture?
It's about mentorship. It's about intergenerational bridges being built so that we are seeing ourselves as our brother's keeper, as our sister's keeper, or shall I say our younger brother's keeper, our younger sister's keeper. We have to be engaged directly with the chapters on campuses. And if you've moved and you're not near the school you went to, you got to get connected to the schools that is in your neighborhood, the chapters in your midst, because institutions at the end of the day are comprised of people. Without the people, the institution is nothing. And so the culture changes slowly based on the decisions and the choices that the people make. And culture is not just what we celebrate, it's also what we sanction. It's not just what we encourage, but also what we discourage. We have to be in the mix and say to the young brothers, no, that's not what we're about. No, that's not what we do. And that's what we've never done. Or if that is what we've done, that's not who we aspire to be. So it's having that intentionality to protect the institution, because we are the people that comprise the institution.
I love that. I want the people to know that you are more than just the winner of the Apprentice. You are a man of passion. I've seen you speak on several occasions. So I want to get into your books, and particularly this last one. And my question for you with this last book, coming out of the George Floyd moment and the moment where everyone seemed to champion, DEI work, and now it seems like it's getting a lot more performative. You actually wrote a book about it, with tools that go along with it. But my question is, what is it to you? What is DEI work to you? And why is it now having more of a negative connotation than something that's beneficial, not just professionally, but personally?
It's a great question, Tanya. And what is DEI to me? DEI to me is about human dignity. It is about fairness, and it's about respect. Unfortunately, it's been co-opted. And I believe the underlying spirit, motivation of why there is now what some call reversity, which is this organized resistance to diversity, equity, and inclusion, is because, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily justified, but I'm saying this is what it is. There's people who are afraid that DEI, more DEI means less of them. It's a threat to their power. It's a threat to their position. It's a threat in their mind to their existence. That DEI is about rewriting history or removing what is considered this majority narrative around history, when in fact, DEI is about balancing the story of history. DEI is not about less of anyone. It's about more for everyone. So it's gotten misinterpreted out of a base of fear. And again, not to defend the fear, but to acknowledge the fear. And now people are fighting back, saying things like, I'm taking my country back, anti-wokeness, reversity, bans on books, anti-critical race theory. Like, this is the manifestation of the fear and the organized resistance to DEI. So I think centering on what it really is, and that's why I loved your opening question, what is it to me? If we center ourselves on what it really is about, dignity, respect, humanity, I dare somebody to have resistance to that. Like, I dare you to have resistance to dignity. I dare you to have resistance to respect. I dare you to have resistance to fairness. So I think we have to, in some ways, almost recast and remind and reinforce what it's really about. It's not about divisiveness. It's not about, us against them. It's always been about humanity.
So this year for me, everything I do, I try to say I try to work towards fighting coward culture. So what you were saying about fear, right? How do we get others to recognize that being cowardice in this moment, or with this word, or with this term, or with this movement, it's cowardice, and it's better for them to not show their fear of this. Like, how do they not show fear? How do they not push back out of coward culture? I don't even know what else to call it, because they are shriveling to coward culture. That seems to be what's going on right now.
Yeah.
How do you get them to recognize you're being a little fraidy cat right now? I'm gonna need you to, pull your shoulders back and your chest up and be a part of this movement that's going to be better for everybody. Come on, come with me. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's going to be good for you. Like, how do you slow walk them? Do you just, force it on them? How can this be an effective moment for everyone? And how do you get them to go along with this movement instead of cowering?
So I'm going to channel my inner Tonya McKenzie in this moment, because you're a public relations expert, the best in the business. And what you know as a PR expert is, when you think about the market or the audience, you segment them, and you have different messages for different audiences. And I think the messaging has to be, first of all, we got to meet people where they are, even though I know where I want them to be, and I don't necessarily agree with why they're there. If I want to move them from where they are to where they can go, I have to meet them at the place that they stand. So I got to deliver a message to them that addresses the fear, that says, it's okay to be afraid, but I need you to be a part of the conversation so we can all understand each other. The only way that we can be more supportive of you is for you to be in the game, for us to have a dialogue that can benefit us all. And one of the greatest gifts I was given by the publisher of my book, Data Driven DEI, was that they challenged me not to focus the book only on DEI champions and leaders and executives, but to focus the book on regular folk. In other words, write a book on how data can drive measurable improvements in diversity, equity, and inclusion that is accessible to anyone, to give them the tools to overcome the fear, to give them the tools to navigate their journey. And we got a website too, datadrivendei.com, with free resources, case studies, templates, tools, best practices that scaffold people along that journey. So I think we got to meet them where they are and then equip them for the ride.
Okay, so here's my question then, because I like your answer, and I absolutely believe what you're saying. I process things in that way. I work with police departments and others that are resistant to some diversity and inclusion. But there are people, your people, that might believe that you're soft walking it by doing it that way, by meeting people where they are instead of being a lot more aggressive about it, or don't give them a pass. Don't give them a pass. No, you're being soft with them. So how do you get those of us that are fighting for more inclusion, diversity, integrity, equality to recognize what you're saying is really the most effective way to move things along in a positive direction?
Great question. So it's not an either or. We can offer up a carrot and we can offer up a stick. The carrot is, I need you to be involved. I need to meet you where you are. I need to give you the tools to navigate your journey. But let's be clear, not everybody is down for that, no matter what I say or do, right? There's going to be some folks who are going to be naysayers and detractors, no matter how well effective we are in our strategies. But the stick is changing policy. And in data-driven DI, I say something that I remind myself. It's much easier to remove bias from a process than from a person. And by that, I mean, if I put in place tying compensation to meeting DEI goals and objectives, it doesn't matter what you care about. You want your bonus. You want your compensation. So you're going to get on board. If I change the interview process, hear me out, that says we must have a diverse interview slate. We must have diverse interviewers. That's our policy. Then even if you're biased against Black and brown people, the process will overcome that. So making these kinds of structural policy changes, which are lasting and transcend who's in the role or who's in the position, juxtaposed against also trying to change people, so it's not an either or, gives us the best shot. I'm gonna say one more thing. Organizations cannot tell people what to believe, but they can tell them how to behave. So at the end of the day, whether you're on board or not, here are some behaviors that I'm expecting from you, that whether you like it or not, I need you to get down with, or you might need to find another place of employment.
I like it. What are some, get specific with the people and tell them what are some of the tools to measure DEI. So for those people that are it's just a thing, they do this thing and they just bring on all these Black people and they trying to brown down our corporations and brown down our departments. What are some of the tools you use to measure the effectiveness of DEI initiatives?
So I'll take that two ways. I'll say people and organizations, because again, the book is geared toward both. It's like two books in one. People, regular people, organizations. For people, you want to assess two things, measure two things, your preferences and your competences. Your preferences are the things that you naturally do. Your competences are the things that you do well. A preference is neither good nor bad. I like water with lemon. You like water without lemon. It's all good. Similarly, I may have a preference for being around men. And by having that preference, I may have a blind spot for hiring women. So by knowing my preference, where I naturally lean, I know where I also might not naturally see. A competence, as is implied, is a value judgment. Either you do something well or you don't do it well. Either you behave inclusively or you don't. You navigate difference or you don't. You lead people or you don't. And so I want to assess my preferences and my competences to know where I am, to know where I can go. Organizations is the 4 Ps: people, process, practice, performance. Assess your people. That's culture and climate. How do they experience your organization? Practices, particularly for leaders, what are their practices on leading on these matters effectively or ineffectively? Policy, we talked about that. Think about the human resources life cycle: hiring, recruiting, advancement, promotion, dismissal. And then performance, you want to benchmark your performance against other organizations in your industry, your sector, your region, etc. Hit those 4 Ps: people, policy, practice, and performance. You've got all your bases covered.
And an organization that's performing better. Imagine that.
That's right.
Imagine that. What is leadership to you?
Leadership to me is serving others. That's it. People talk about servant leadership, but to me, servant leadership is leadership. And servant leadership also, for me, embraces inclusive leadership. And if you want to lead in the 21st century, in a society that is increasingly more diverse and is increasingly crossing borders and is increasingly requiring you to lead people who are not like you, service and inclusivity, to me, are the cornerstones of being an effective leader in the 21st century.
Why are people so hungry for titles when that's not really what defines leadership? Talk to me about that.
Well, that's a good one, because we confuse who we are with what we do. You know, in a lot of Eastern countries, I'll come back to the West, China, Africa, a common question at a social gathering is, who are you related to? What family are you a part of? In the West, common question we would ask is, what do you do?
100%.
And you see the difference, right? One is centered on community, family, relationships. The other is centered on work, vocation, titles, to get back to your question. And it explains why someone who might have an identity as a professional athlete, that when they are at the crossroads of retirement, doesn't know who they are, because you confuse what you do with who you are. And when you make that distinction, then you begin to see that what defines us is our relationships. Our relationship to God means I'm a child of God by definition. I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a friend. Like, those are the things that define us. And when we don't lose sight of that, then no one can ever take that away from us. And therefore, we don't get caught up in titles.
Yeah, our society, we so confused, because even with who you are, you're a father, it still comes with what you do. And that's not even always matching up these days.
That's right. That's right. No, we got it twisted. It's got to be more fundamental, grounding identity is what it boils down to. Identity is how you define who you are.
Who are you as a husband?
I'm a happy husband. I love my wife. My wife is the bomb.com. My wife is an entrepreneur too.
Is she?
Yes, she's an entrepreneur. So we share in this entrepreneurial journey. Natasha.
She's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. She's a blessing. She's a woman of God. She's my best friend. She is the love of my life. She's my biggest supporter, and she's also my most loving critic. You know, like, she keeps it real with me.
You do something wrong? Are you kidding me? You're not perfect? Oh my God. What?
She'll be the first to let you know. Yeah, she's
Well,
wonderful.
listen, I got to give the people what they want. So you got to let us know what it was like to work with Donald Trump. You know, what was that like? And then what is going on in Florida? Like, I hate to really dip into politics, but when you worked with him, wasn't really political. But talk to me about what it was like to work with him, and then your thoughts on what's going on in Florida right now.
Yeah. So for your dedicated viewers, as the winner of the 4th season of The Apprentice, I won the opportunity to run one of Donald Trump's companies. Yes, that's right. Somebody's shaking their head right now, like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." Yes, and I got to see very early what America got to see very late, which is that Donald is a dangerous man. And when he announced his candidacy for the presidency, I organized a press conference with other Apprentice contestants.
I saw that.
Asking them, will you stand with me to denounce his candidacy? And then only 4 people joined me, because the other candidates said either of 2 things. Either I'm actually with Donald, or I'm afraid to speak out against Donald. And I was not afraid. And I remain undeterred in my criticism, my concern, and my critique of Donald as a leader, because he was a hot mess. And it is my hope, if not my prayer, that America does not let me down again in 2024, like America let me down in 2020. Let's set the record straight on that. So to answer your question directly, what was it like to work for him? Well, you kind of know what I know now. I mean, the Trump organization I found to be a very divisive organization, unnecessarily combative, lacking of diversity and representation at all levels. I was the only brown person I saw at the executive level for my entire year in the Trump organization, which is why
say anything about that?
Oh, most definitely. And
how was that received?
Deaf ears.
Okay.
Because what you know now about Donald, what I know is that if you disagree with Donald, he will put you out of his inner circle. And that's why the White House was a revolving door. Omarosa, who's a friend of mine, I went in with, she was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then she realized if you swim with sharks, you might get bitten. So, I'm not disillusioned, nor is America now. America knows what they're getting if they buy Donald again. I mean, hurt me once, shame on me. Hurt me twice, shame on you. No, hurt me once, shame on you. Hurt me twice, shame on me. So,
and I think I asked that really quick because I know that there are people in corporations that would like to be as brave as you and speak up on some of the things that they see as wrong with an organization, particularly when it's a diversity issue. And it does not go well. So what would be your best advice to someone that's saying, hey, I'm going to speak up on some of these issues that I see. I have a book that has all the tools that can show that, it can be great and productive and profitable if we start to do all these things that are said in Dr. Pinkett's book, and they get the pushback. So what is your best advice to them for how they move forward when they see that they're not being received well, or even acknowledging where improvement can happen, and they don't want to hear it?
So my second to last book was Black Faces in White Places. I'm sorry, Black Faces in High Places. It was a sequel to Black Faces in White Places. That's the book right over here, over my right shoulder. And in the book, I offer advice to that very scenario. And it's 4 F's. As you can see, I love frameworks. Fight, flight, forgo, or friend. Flight says, if it's that bad, go. If it's that bad, go. Forgo says, maybe you just got hired and you're just out of college. You might want to wait till you're in a better position to fight that fight. Friend says, is there a way I can make my enemies my friends? Is there a way I can draw them closer to me, to be an ally, to be a sponsor, to be a supporter? But the last F is the most important F, and it gets to the core of your question. The last F is to fight. Now, you got to be strategic about that. But I believe we all have a responsibility at some point in our careers or some points in our careers to fight for something because somebody fought for us. We wouldn't be where we are if somebody didn't fight. And therefore, we have an obligation to fight for the next generation. So if you go through all your career friending, foregoing, and taking flight, then you've occupied wasted space.
I like a good fight. Can you tell?
I can tell. I can tell. It was in your question.
So what did you do at the Trump organization? Which F did you tackle?
Well, again, when I organized the press conference, I cannot tell you how many people advised me not to do it. They're like, you're going to denounce the man who might become president. And again, let me put it into context. I run a company, BCT Partners, 23 years in business. 60 to 70% of our business is with the federal government. Process that. I make 70% of my revenue from the federal government, and I spoke out against Donald before he became president. So I had employees saying, yo, bro, what are you doing? I had friends saying, yo, are you sure you want to do that? I had family members like, whoa, like, did you want a target on your chest? And my answer to that is yes. You don't lead from a position of fear. Dr. King didn't do it. Rosa Parks didn't do it. Harriet Tubman didn't do it. And if we all lead from fear, the status quo remains. We have to realize that we stand on the shoulders of giants, but we must become giants so others can stand on our shoulders. So I had no reservations nor hesitations in fighting to say to Donald, I've seen you behind closed doors. I know how you roll that folks don't know, and I'm going to let my story be told. Now, granted, my megaphone wasn't big enough because he still won. But that doesn't diminish that it wasn't still the right thing to do. We fight because that's how progress is made.
So should everybody that doesn't agree with DeSantis leave Florida now?
Now that's take flight.
Man, come through.
Yeah. Now, for those that aren't clear, let's be clear. DeSantis was behind the Stop Woke Act, which limited discussions of privilege, race in schools. They just passed another bill that gives healthcare providers the ability to refuse care based on someone's identity, meaning I don't like that you're black, I can deny care. I don't like that you're an immigrant, I can deny care. I mean, are you kidding me? So all of us in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I talk about this in data-driven DI, have our eyes on Florida because Florida is becoming the litmus test for the diversity movement. And Texas is right behind them because Texas is now leading the way on banning books in libraries. So we got to watch Florida and we got to watch Texas because much like the Supreme Court tells us kind of the temperature of the country, Florida and Texas are telling us the temperature for DEI.
It's crazy right now. And it's really hard not to get your blood pressure up about some of this stuff. So watching all of these things that are taking place in our culture, in our world, in our United States, how do you stay grounded and focused on your business and your marriage and your family and, you know, all the things that you have going on with you? Because the outside world is still, it's like a hot mess, like you said. So how do you stay focused? How do you stay grounded and still continue to fight, teach, and lead? Yeah,
there's two grounding governing principles for me. And we talked about one of them. It's all about, for me, identity and purpose. Identity is how I define myself. Purpose is where I see my direction. Said differently, think of identity like an anchor. It grounds you. Think of purpose like a compass. It guides you. Think of identity as roots so that when the wind blows, you stand firm. Think of purpose as wings that give you the ability to use that wind to fly. Because the more you're on this planet, the longer you live your life, and dare I say, the higher you ascend in your career, the winds blow more violently.
Mm.
The winds of racism, the winds of expectation, the winds of no one's done that before. You can't do that. And only if you know who you are and are rooted when those winds blow and know which direction you're going when those winds blow. Otherwise, you are a leaf in the wind. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. If you don't define yourself, somebody else will. So for me, it's identity and purpose that I have to nurture, which means my spirituality. It means my family. It means my affirmation of my Black manhood through the likes of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and how I continually clarify what it is that I see as my purpose, my calling, my mission, my missionary that keeps me focused on who I am and where I'm going.
I love that. Listen, tell the people where they can get your book, how they can continue to follow your journey, how they can get you to come speak, because I know you're busy and stuff. But those that really want to be connected to you, the spirit that you have kind of flowing through everything, your entire body of work, and your organization. And I've been to the website, y'all, so make sure you go to the website for his DEI work. Tell people where they can find you, be connected to you, and work with you.
I appreciate that. So everything I've been talking about with flight, fight, forgo, identity and purpose, that's all in Black faces in white places and Black faces in high places. All of what we discuss about diversity, equity, and inclusion and your personal journey and your organizational journey is all in data-driven DEI. You can learn more about data-driven DEI at datadrivendei.com. All the remainder of my books, you can go to Randal Pinkett with one L, randalpinkett.com, or you can follow me on all platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, at Randal Pinkett with one L. And I just encourage those that are listening to learn more about the books, learn more about the work we're doing at my firm, bctpartners.com. And if you are looking for speakers, looking for DEI consultants, then as we say, holla at your boy. Holla at your boy.
I love that. So you guys know all of his information will be in the captions. Please make sure that you do just that. Get in touch, follow his journey, get the books. You know, secrets are hidden in books, y'all. I'm just letting you know. Secrets, there are some real life secrets and gems in his book. So please take the opportunity to connect with this amazing person here, his ice cold brother of API.
Oh,
I do want to thank you. I do for taking the time to be here and sharing your thoughts, because it's important. It's important to hear who you are, what you're really about, how you're moving the needle forward. And I think it gives others the power and the audacity to do the same, because like coward culture holds people back a lot. When you get into the depths of what is keeping people from fighting, right? Talking about some of the more difficult things that we've been able to just really tap on today. I think coward culture is really behind that, and fear drives people to inaction instead of using that power to create action that allows for us to move forward as a culture and hell, as a country. Because at the end of the day, what you're telling people is, look, your business can be better. Your life can be better. So why would you run from that? What has you so fearful that you run from something that someone says is good for you, is good for the country, is good for your organization, hell, is good for your quality of life? I don't know, that's why we have these conversations, hoping that people pick up a little motivation to do better. So I think you've motivated them today. Again, I want to thank you for being here. And please let us know when you come into California we can come out and support. Will you be touring with the book at all?
Yeah. I mean, not surprisingly, much of the touring has been virtual in this post-pandemic world, but I do and am traveling increasingly as the world has reopened. So if I'm in your neighborhood, you will be certain to know. And Sister Tonya, thank you for your voice. Thank you for what you're doing to lift up these issues. I told you I would learn something, and I have learned much from you about what it means to fight, about how we organize resistance to the issues that we're facing. And to your last point, how do we make certain that we keep our eyes on the prize and don't lose sight of the things that truly matter in this world and why we're here to affect those things. So thank you, sister, for all that you are doing, all that you've done, and all that you will do.
Thank you again. All right, guys, take it easy.
Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.